Before we begin, close your eyes for a moment and think about the one person who has always been the center of your world. Imagine giving them your time, your dreams, your strength, day after day, year after year. Then imagine waking up one morning and realizing they no longer need you the way they once did. Sometimes, the deepest heartbreak doesn't come from losing someone. It comes from watching them slowly grow beyond your reach. My name is Elise, and this is the story of the hardest lesson motherhood ever taught me. For more than 2 decades, my life revolved around one person, my son, Lenny. I wasn't just his mother. I was his protector, his biggest supporter, and often the only person standing between him and life's hardships. Raising a child alone isn't something anyone truly prepares for. Every unpaid bill, every sleepless night, every difficult decision rested on my shoulders. There were days when I felt like giving up, but then I'd hear his laughter, and suddenly every sacrifice felt worthwhile. Children don't stay little forever. One day they're reaching for your hand to cross the street. Before you know it, they're walking miles ahead, convinced they no longer need anyone to guide them. Lenny was 22 when I first noticed the distance. It wasn't the kind you could measure in miles. It was quieter than that. His laughter had become rare. His conversations grew shorter. Even when we sat in the same room, it felt like invisible walls had formed between us. One cold evening, the front door opened much later than usual. I looked up from my book and immediately knew something wasn't right. His shoulders were heavy. His eyes carried the weight of someone fighting battles no one else could see. "Everything okay?" I asked gently. He forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." Every parent knows those words. Sometimes "I'm fine" is simply another way of saying, "Please don't ask me what's hurting." Instead of questioning him, I made 2 cups of tea and sat quietly beside him. Minutes passed in complete silence. For the first time since he was a little boy, I realized I couldn't read his heart anymore. When children are young, they cry when they're scared. Adults become experts at hiding their pain. As I watched him stare at the floor, twisting his fingers nervously, something inside me changed. Maybe the hardest part of parenting isn't raising a child. Maybe it's learning when to stop trying to rescue them. Just then, the silence was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Standing outside was our longtime neighbor, Mark. He had come by with a simple excuse, to check whether the heating system was working before winter arrived. It was an ordinary conversation, but when I looked back into the living room, I noticed Lenny watching us. There was something in his expression I couldn't understand. Not anger, not jealousy, almost concern. As if he had suddenly realized that my life might someday continue without depending entirely on him. That night after Mark left, another quiet knock echoed through the house. Lenny stood at my bedroom door. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice trembled just enough for me to notice. He sat down beside me, staring at his hands for what felt like forever. Then he whispered 4 words that changed everything. "I don't know who I am anymore." The room fell silent. Those weren't just the fears of a young man entering adulthood. They were the fears of someone terrified of failing before life had truly begun. I reached for his hand. To my surprise, my own hands were shaking, because deep inside I had been hiding a secret of my own. I didn't know who I was anymore either. For 22 years, my identity had been wrapped around being someone's mother. If he no longer needed me the same way, who was I supposed to become? Tears filled my eyes as I smiled through the silence. "Maybe," I whispered, "we're both starting over." For the first time that evening, he smiled back. It wasn't a perfect smile. It was the kind people wear when hope begins to return after a long season of fear. Neither of us realized it then. But that quiet conversation would become the first step toward a journey that would test our love, challenge our hearts, and teach us that letting go isn't the end of a family. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a different kind of love.